On this edition of Let's Talk Cincy.
I'm just thankful.
Words from a man officially set free after spending nearly 30 years on death row and the past 3 years in limbo, waiting for the truth.
I'm blessed in a way that I can't even begin to say. All I can do is like I've been doing.
This office, under my leadership, does not cheat in order to score a win.
You cannot look at the evidence in the full light of all of it and conclude that he is guilty, much less guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. You just can't.
Look, I don't take any of this process and this decision lightly. I know that Mrs. Nathan doesn't get justice. I know that there's another person who committed this horrific act.
The case of Elwood Jones.
I have always believed in law and order. If you get caught, pay the price. But when you lie and cheat and put someone in jail for something they didn't do, did you not following the rules? And that bothers me more than anything.
From WLWT, this is the Emmy Award-winning show, Let's Talk Cincy. Presented by Western and Southern Financial Group. Put our financial strength behind you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Curtis Fuller, and welcome to Let's Talk Cincy. From death row to freedom, the case of Elwood Jones. After nearly 30 years, all charges dropped against the man once convicted of murder. Hamilton County Prosecutor Connie Pillage saying this case is over. In 1996, Jones was convicted of murdering Rhoda Nathan in a Blue Ash hotel. In 2022, Judge Wendy Cross overturned the conviction and granted him a new trial, saying the state withheld critical evidence, thousands of pages of documents. She also excluded any unavailable witness testimony, including from a key witness, Officer Michael Bray, who has since died.
30 years ago, we had different means of testing evidence, analyzing it, working through it, than we do today. A number of things were very compelling to me. The fact that we had modern day medical evidence that excluded him. We have the ability to review from all those thousands of pages of investigators' notes. We found a plethora of statements from witnesses who saw other people near that hotel room where Mrs. Nathan was killed. And these witness statements were given separately. People did not collaborate on what they were going to say. And they came up with very similar descriptions of different people. So what we can say now is that I get a modern day review, which is my right and my duty as the prosecutor. And from that review, and my first assistant, who's a 30-year trial lawyer, brought up in this office, a skilled criminal trial lawyer, she came up with the same conclusions as I did.
When I got to call him and tell him that, he said, "What's going on?" I said, "I've been waiting 30 years to tell you this." And he started to cry, and I started to cry. And I just can't even describe what that emotion feels like.
I take it as a victory, and I can live with that.
This is the result of a months-long intensive review of trial paperwork, of court filings, of evidence. 3 years ago, Judge Cross granted Elwood Jones a new trial. He had been previously convicted of murder of Rhoda Nathan. Judge Cross also excluded testimony from the now deceased investigator. This office appealed both of those decisions, and we lost both of those appeals. However, the Ohio Supreme Court did deliver us a win, and they agreed that my lawyers followed the correct legal process for appealing certain cases. I'm very proud of them because this has an impact on prosecutor offices all across Ohio. So in my process, as I was reviewing this case, I worked alongside with my first assistant prosecutor. We actually did a separate review and then compared our findings and our understanding of the evidence and the procedural posture of the case. And we did take a deep dive, and it took us months to get through this. This case is 30 years old. It's had multiple appeals, lots of evidence. And over those months and in recent weeks, I came to the conclusion that there's a lack of evidence, both physical and forensic, tying Mr. Jones to the murder. There had been, we've learned of poor follow-up on evidence of multiple alternative suspects. And information provided by multiple witnesses at the scene. And this information, again, pointed to multiple alternative suspects. Modern-day medical testing excluded Mr. Jones as a suspect. And additionally, the prior failure of the prosecutor's office to disclose thousands of pages of information from the investigation was a critical part of my decision. As a result of this review, we found that trying this case anew would be futile. We just don't have evidence to prove Mr. Jones was the killer. This morning I spoke with both of the children of Mrs. Nathan, and it's hard to imagine the grief of a family who's lost anyone, let alone in such a brutal way. Their mom deserves justice, and her life does matter greatly to me. But my job is to deliver justice with integrity, not go after the first person we identify as a possible suspect. This office, under my leadership, does not cheat in order to score a win. We are diligent and deliberate, and we do our job with thought and with integrity in mind. And that does bring me to the last thing I want to share with you, is that I am creating a conviction integrity unit that will follow the nationally established best practices to review evidence, to research, to address potential wrongful convictions, and to address unjust sentencing. If such a unit had existed years ago, this case probably would have been resolved long ago.
Has it sunk in?
No, it hasn't. I was, to be honest with you, I wasn't feeling too good today, and so I was in there asleep in my room when Jay called, and I was still a little discombobulated, and I got up, and I went in and told my sister, say I'm free. She didn't understand what I meant by that, and I said, Jay just told me that she had dropped charges against me. And she said, thank you, Jesus. And I went back in the other room, and I tried to reach out to my sister Elaine to tell her. And I didn't get her at first. I got her email. And I think the next person I called is a member of my church. It's very close to me, Jan, and told her. I said, have you seen the news? She said, no. I said, would you please reach out to Rachel and everybody? And at that time, I had a phone call from Sarah Thornburn and told me that she said, congratulations. And I said, well, I'll see you Sunday at church.
6 times you you were up against, that was it. 6 times you were facing the death sentence. And now here you are completely free. How do you even comprehend that?
I don't, to be honest with you. I thought about it even my way over here. I was being real careful, even driving us out of I can't afford a ticket or anything. Or something happened, and mysteriously happened to me. One thing happened, I say, well, this is not a sign, but I let that go. And I went on, and I thought about what I want to do. And I said, eventually I'm going to reach out to Cecil Thomas. He's on my list. Be actually to speak to the committee about the death penalty. To me, that's a start in one sense, that we need to do it a little bit better than we've done. And from there, look at other ways, how I feel that I want to make a change. And especially in this county, my health is not as good as me, but I'm able to actually deliver this message and go from there. It's a day that I'm thankful, but I don't think I could have did it without the number of people that actually took the time. And I can say that you won, Amber won, there's a few other organizations, and mainly Jay, Dave, Emily, Zach, and others, Bill Gallagher, and on, who actually still looked and tried to do to help me. So I'm thankful. I'm blessed in a way that I can't even begin to say. All I can do is like I've been doing. It's like I'm still walking on the eggshells because I feel, even when I get up in the morning, when I come out, if I turn wrong and something happens, that I have let the people down who actually gave, even Judge Cross. So that's going to be a balancing act the rest of my life. And everything I got to really balance and say, like, I don't want to say, well, I told you so, because you haven't told. So I'm going to walk, and I have walked that for these 3 years, and I'm going to walk the rest of my life to try to make it that you didn't make the wrong decision. Just move forward and try to do better for the next person instead of using politics, because I truly believe politics played the major role in what happened to me. And I just want to change it.
Anything I have done in my life, and I'm being serious when I say this, I've been married twice, I've won trials, I've lost trials, I've won appeals, I've lost appeals, I've won in the House Supreme Court, lost in the House. Everything I've done in my entire life, graduated from high school, college, anything, has never left me the way I feel right now. And I just can't even describe what that emotion feels like. It was just simply overwhelming.
You know, she could have taken a much more tepid position today and just said, time has passed and we're not going to prosecute it. And she didn't. And I think huge credit to the prosecutor for being transparent about the thought process and explaining why, a serious case like this is coming to a conclusion right now, the way that it is.
I mean, I'm not trying to point fingers, but at the end of the day, somebody had to make these decisions back then, and they made them wrong. And I think they made them wrong knowing they were wrong. That's where my anger is. Because, I mean, you've covered this long enough to know the things that they knew and didn't share. You had to know. The reason you didn't share them is because you were going to lose.
Right.
So they've had to know it was wrong. That's where my anger is still with the whole thing. Okay, it cost him 30 years. Today is a phenomenal step forward from where we've been in the last 30 years of prosecutors in Hamilton County. Yeah, tremendous step forward.
Relief, because we have been begging somebody to do the right thing. I think that's kind of been the motto through the whole case. And so the fact that somebody did, I think that's just, I would say relief, overwhelm, and just, I'm grateful that I even got to know Elwood, let alone that he trusted us with his life.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'll ever be able to fully grasp what that means, but yeah, I think just grateful, overwhelmed, and relieved ultimately. Yeah, it was reading that dismissal. I mean, it's just a page on the table over here, a couple of sentences. It's like the greatest win we'll ever.
One shaded piece of paper can make such a huge difference.
Change someone's life.
I mean, if you're putting yourself in her shoes, right? This is a case that's been very public, not just recently, but for 30 years in peaks and valleys, and so the dismissal. Some people are going to be scratching their head, going, "Why? Someone was convicted of this. Someone was sentenced to die for this. Why are we walking away from it?" And I think she did the right thing by trying to walk people through the fact that this is not, as Elwood said, a political decision. This is not something that's done for judicial efficiency. This is about, as you said, the truth. This is about looking at the evidence, and it just isn't there. Somebody killed Rhoda Nathan, but it's not Elwood Jones. And so I think there was a line in her press conference where she said something to the effect of, "My job is to, apply justice to the person who did it, not to just go after the first person that we identify as a potential suspect." That's what has happened for the past 30 years. And she's, I think she did the right thing today in spelling out that that's what happened, that's wrong. And although it's cold comfort to try to fix it 30 years later, it's the only thing that she can do today.
How do you celebrate this, if that's the right word? How do you even...
Well, if you ask me how do I celebrate it, I could celebrate it and say that even though I'm the victim in here, and Miss Nathan is a victim because her family never received justice, it's the right step. It's the right step that we making a turn in this county. And believe me, this county needed more than any county in the 88 counties that it is. There's been blasted with foolishness and politics. I got swept up in it because the people was in office and it took a long battle, but I truly believe it was all politics.
How have you been able to just sustain yourself?
My faith and the people around me, they keep telling me to keep going. And I say it over and over. People in this room have helped me and my family. And people at my church. So I've been able, and believe me, it's been many dark days I get up and I've still been able, some in that day, a little light shine.
We all know that a 1963 Supreme Court case says that all potentially exculpatory evidence has to be disclosed to the defense. That didn't happen in this case. I don't know whose fault it was. I wasn't there 30 years ago when it was tried, but we do know now that that happened, which gives me great pause. We're not allowed to cheat. And we have to follow the rules, just like the defense has to follow the rules, just like the police have to follow the rules. So that's one part. But second, because I have the benefit of modern science, I can look at the evidence that was collected under a I think this was in 2022 when it was tested again. And that tells me that Jones is excluded as a suspect. So the process does actually open it up. If the police decide they want to open this up again, they can. I understand, and I know I entered this fully, knowing that it is going to be very difficult to solve an old case like this. I know that the investigation did consume a lot of officers for at least a year, and that many of the things they did were right, but they can't fail to disclose evidence. And even if we hadn't had that issue, we do have new evidence, which is the medical evidence that excludes him as a suspect. So long ago, the coroner did a report, as the coroner does. Within that examination, the coroner did a blood test and found that Mrs. Nathan had hepatitis B. The modern review, by a very distinguished expert, testified at the motion for a new trial that hepatitis B is extremely contagious. Even tiny, tiny pinpricks of a contagious sample could lead and would lead to someone contracting the disease. The testimony at trial was that this was a brutal murder, that the decedent was beaten, there was blood, and that Mr. Jones had an injury on his hand for which he filed a workers' comp claim because he did it at work, and for which he received treatment. But he had never contracted hepatitis B from it, and that was the new evidence. And that excludes him as a suspect. So yes, he's a free man. This case is over, and it won't come back to bother him again.
Well, that does it for the program today. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Curtis Fuller. I'll see you next time for another edition of Let's Talk Cincy. Until then, have a good day and a better day tomorrow.